I decided I'd rather be broke because of me than to go to another company that they screw up marketing and they screw something, and then like I have to worry about losing my job.
Yeah.
Like if I lose a client, it's my fault.
Right.
Like I don't have anybody to blame, and I enjoyed that.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Raylen Davis here, and currently out of Phoenix. Thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you? What does championship leadership mean to you?
Well, I got my first dose in leadership. I was fortunate enough to work in the corporate space, which is odd right now, is that I'm finding that more and more online business coaches that I'm working with, they didn't have a corporate background. Like they just jumped right into. And so there's some good parts of that. I was just talking to somebody. There's some good parts of that, and that there's a lot of bad habits maybe you don't pick up.
Yeah.
But you don't like, to me, my corporate experience is a lot like an apprenticeship.
Sure. Yeah.
It was for now. Right. So anyway, I first got my dose of leadership at the corporate level because I was fortunate. I had a really good leader when I first signed up. I remember even the interview that I had with him. I was like, he was old school sales guy from Miami, 3-piece suit, like the whole nine. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm having the interview with him. I'm sweating buckets. Like I'm so nervous. Like I'm just, and I like at this time, like I just transitioned from being a professional fighter. So I didn't even own a suit. I had to go and like I had one button up that I wore to the interview. And then I had every new interview I had to buy a new dress shirt. Anyway, I'm sweating buckets. And he asked me at the end, what do you want like with this job? And I said, well, I want to take your job. Like I want to be the VP. And for whatever reason, I bombed the interview. Like I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't know anything about sales. Like it was terrible. But he liked that. And so I was fortunate that he flew out and trained me himself.
Okay.
He flew out from Miami to Phoenix and spent, I think it was like 2 weeks with me and just taught me everything. And that was my first dose of leadership. And that the way that he led was a very like example driven leadership. Watch how I live my life. Yeah. And yes, we talked about sales and stuff, but I think for the most part, he just told me about how he lived his life, which was around like even his schedule, like, because eventually I got to his point where I was traveling every week for work, and he set up his life around that to where he worked out. He flew back home on Friday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he was lifting, and in the mornings to do cardio. And so even these little things, my point is that the leadership that I took from him was show by example. But also your leader should inspire you to want to be better. Yeah. And so when I became a leader of my own and, eventually became like a coach kind of in that corporate realm, that's how I led by. It was like, if I work on how Nate deals with life outside of work, he'll be a really good employee for me. So I focus more on that. And even now with my coaching, I do the same thing.
Yeah. 100% makes total sense. Pretty awesome that you had that type of a leader out the gates too, which doesn't always happen, right?
Yeah. And I got super fortunate too in that I got really in high school and stuff. I didn't read much. And in college, I definitely didn't read in college.
Yeah. For sure.
But I got obsessed with leadership because of him. And so I started picking up every single book. And one of the first leadership books I bought was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Okay. Yeah. That's a great one.
I got obsessed with the military. And so, because listen, there's no better organization that does leadership than the military. Like you cannot convince me otherwise. Like they're the best. And but what the main thing that I took away from them was they don't leave anything to chance. Yeah. When you're kicking, like when somebody's kicking out a door, they know exactly how they're going to kick the door down. They know exactly where we're going to go afterwards, and they do it, repetition. And so that became, again, part of my leadership style, which is, super proud moment for me was I had an employee once that like, you were in the military? And I was like, no. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I'm doing it right then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's cool.
Because again, they're the best to ever do it.
Yeah. What kind of sales was it?
So I did higher education, for-profit higher education. So I worked in the college. So it's a unique, it was a unique selling kind of model where normally you sell something, a widget to somebody, they buy it, and then you just keep in touch with them in case they want to buy more. Yeah. Well, in higher education, for-profit higher education, we make money off the students, right? Whereas like nonprofit, which is like your typical university, they don't really care about you too much. We
Right.
have to care.
Yeah.
And meaning
Yeah.
I enroll Nate, I have to see you now for the next year,
Okay.
every day.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's my job to make sure you don't drop out of school, because the
Yeah.
school doesn't make money unless you do that. So anyway, our average sales cycle would be like 30 weeks.
Yeah.
Because you can walk out, right? You
Right.
can not go to school, and the school doesn't make money. So
Yeah.
that's how I learned sales. And it was a different approach in that. And that, again, it benefited me very much so in what I do now, because it was very inspiration based. It
Yeah.
wasn't like, hey, you want to be more productive? Here's this this SaaS model. It was like, you want to be this kind of a person.
Yeah.
You've been living your life this way. Now you want to be like this. Let's bridge the gap. And so it was a different kind of sales.
Yeah.
But the most fortunate thing ever for me was that after I got out of that, and so the school was like 30, had 30 locations, and it closed, and it got bought out, and then the for-profit entity, the entity that bought it, ended up shutting up half the locations, and then I got severance. The best thing ever for me was that nobody wanted to hire me, because they looked at it and say, "Oh, you worked sales for a school that's on sales," and so I couldn't get hired anymore.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I had the choice of go back into that or start my own thing. So I decided to start my own thing.
Okay. So how long did you do that before starting your own thing?
4 years. And during that time, again, I call it my apprenticeship, because I got super fortunate in that we hired a consultant. It was the first time I kind of realized I want to be a consultant. So we hired a consultant to come in, and he did a 3-day workshop, and he stayed with us for 6 months. Okay. And I got kind of close with him. Really smart dude.
Yeah.
His clients were like Lexus, Gucci, that kind of thing. And what he was teaching was how to coach. And I was like, I could do this, because it's all based on military, and it's all based on sports, which I had a background in sports, obviously.
Yep.
So it was all based around how do you develop a skill, and the skill is coaching. Anyway, I found out, I was like, how much do you make doing this?
Yeah.
He made $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
$1 million contract. And I was like, what? For teaching this? Granted, he's a phenomenal coach at that. He's been doing it for 30 years at that point. But still, I'm like, the concept, I could teach this. I could do this. And it was the first time I remember I'd said to him once, I want to work for you. And he was like, no, you don't. You can do your own thing. Just do what I'm doing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And that was when I had the first little seed in my head, I could be a consultant.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, that's very cool. So you were a professional fighter as well? Talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to school originally for Central Michigan University, wrestled. I tore my groin my sophomore year, which was, as you can imagine, was terrible.
Yeah.
But I had this moment where, it was like 9 months I couldn't walk and whatever. And I had a friend of mine, when I was starting to heal, was like, hey, he was fighting, and he was like, hey, I need help with wrestling. Can you come coach me? I said, yeah, no problem. So I went up there and was helping him in the team with coaching wrestling, and they needed somebody to spar one day. They're like, we just need a body. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I got my ass beat bad.
Right.
And I think something's wrong with me in that. If I'm not good at something, I obsess over it.
Yeah.
And so then next thing you know, I'm a fighter. Right. And so I took, I think it was 16 amateur fights in Michigan. And then I also at the same time had a midlife crisis where I was like, I went to school to be a teacher. I was going to be a PE teacher.
Yeah. Same here.
And and I was like, whose life can I affect as a PE teacher? I'm just going to roll out balls every day. What am I doing? And so I was like, well, I learned about this camp out in Arizona called Arizona Combat Sports.
Okay.
And they were known for turning wrestlers into fighters. And they worked with CB Dalloway and Ryan Bader and some of the biggest names in UFC. So anyway, I moved out to Arizona on a whim, took an amateur fight out here, and then became a fighter, became a professional after that. And then the hard part, and this is also part of the apprenticeship, I guess, to where I am now, in that you have to learn marketing. You have to market yourself, because to get it put on a card, you have to sell tickets. Yeah. Right. I'm not going to put you on my card if nobody knows about you or cares about you. Right.
Right.
So that was the first kind of inkling of social media, for example, because my good friend at the time was Jamie Varner, who was a UFC veteran, and he had a huge social media following. Yeah. And so that was how he sold tickets, though, was through his social media. So it was the first kind of inkling of that. And then the transition out, again, this is where I went to corporate, is that I couldn't land fights because I had a background as a wrestler and whatever. I was 2-1. I'd lost one fight and I came back and won another one. And I remember I went to UFC tryouts. This is back when they had the Ultimate Fighter show.
Yeah.
So I went to Vegas for that. Basically, I went to the interview section. So you show up your skills, whatever. And then they basically said I was too boring for camera. So I didn't drink or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I remember going to my coach. This is still like, I still train at Arizona Combat Sports. I still do jiu-jitsu. Okay. And this is why my head coach at the time was like, he's like my best friend. And I went to him and I said, hey, look, because basically they told us like, hey, a few more fights and he'll make it to the UFC. He doesn't need the show. And but I had this job opportunity to make a career. And keep in mind, Nate, like I'm not making money.
Yeah.
Like each fight was like $1,500.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes to like the gym and my coach and you know, whatever. So I was like, hey, I think I could make a living being in sales. And I went to my coach and said, what do you think I should do? Keep in mind, this coach, right? He's my manager also. Yeah. He'll make money off me finally if I make it to the UFC.
Sure.
And he tells me, he just says, like, you're too smart for this game. This game, like, you're too smart for it.
Yeah.
Like, don't fight anymore. Go do that. So I did. So I have a lot to
you had a lot of great coaches, mentors in your path there. It sounds like that, you know, had your best interest in mind too, right?
Yeah, that's part of it too, right? Is like there's this Dan Henry, he's like a marketer. He posted this yesterday on Instagram, and basically said like the reason why your kids or whatever are not becoming great entrepreneurs is because the teachers that are there are broke and they have this broke mindset, and you yourself become broke because of that. I don't agree with that, because their job, the teachers that I had and the coaches I had, their job wasn't to teach me about how to be a billionaire. Right. The job was to teach me how to think.
Yeah.
And the one thing that my school did very well when I was in high school, and the coach that I had in wrestling, Coach Smith, I always give him kudos because he was the first millionaire I ever met. He was a volunteer, Nate. He was a volunteer wrestling coach who also happened to be an alternate in the Olympics. Oh, he was a four-time state champion in Michigan. Yeah. And also University of Toledo doesn't have a wrestling team anymore, but he was All-American for Toledo in the 70s. Stud. Okay. He volunteered his time to coach and became like a mentor to me, but he was a millionaire. And he was the first person that ever told me like, oh, I'm a millionaire. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, did you win the lottery? Like, I don't understand. Right. Like I didn't, but that exposure. So anyway, but he was the first person that sat me down. And when I was going to school, granted, it took me a minute to catch on to this, but he sat me down. I remember the summer before I signed for the Air Force Academy, because I went to play football originally for Air Force Academy, and then I decided to go to Central. But he goes, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a teacher. He goes, well, how much are you going to make doing that? I'm like, I don't know, like 40 grand a year. He goes, all right, well, tell me about the lifestyle you want to live. And I was, basically it was like the lifestyle I told him was like $500,000 a year lifestyle, right? Like the house and where I wanted to live and the vacations and the kids. And and he's like, so let me get this straight. You're going to make 40 grand a year. But you want this lifestyle. He goes, the problem with most people is that they go to school, they take a personality test, and which, by the way, I did, and it told me I should be a teacher. You take a personality test that tells you to take a career. You go to college and you learn about that. And then you take a job that job dictates your lifestyle. Yeah. He goes, I did it the other way around. I decided what I wanted, and then I just did the thing that got me what I wanted. Yeah. Again, didn't catch on until after college. But again, but my point is, though, these are my teachers and coaches. They taught me how to think. Yeah. And now fast forward, like, am I a millionaire yet? No, but I have a multiple six-figure agency. And it came from that way of looking at the world. Yeah. So yeah, I've been super fortunate with the coaches and mentors I've had.
What did he do to become a millionaire?
He actually paints Home Depots. So
really,
he goes around it's interesting because actually my summer job in high school was working for him.
Okay.
Dude, I made so much money. Like for a high school kid, he paid me for like one trip. It was like $2,000. Oh,
wow. Yeah. In high school? You kidding me?
In high school, Nate, I was balling. Okay. Balling. This is when gas was like, I had a 1989 Toyota Corolla. To fill up my gas tank was $15. Yeah. Nate, I was balling. All right. Don't ask me where that money went. I have no idea. I went to like shoes and clothes, but no. So like all the Home Depots, the ceilings, He paints all of them.
Okay.
Every year he goes around and paints Home Depots, and he has other customers and stuff too. But that was his gig. And that was the first kind of moment that I realized was like, oh, you can monetize anything. And that's why, like, you know, for me, we have what's called the Elevated Coaches Academy. It's like, look, whatever is the goal is to find your purpose.
Yeah.
And then you can monetize anything. Like I know somebody that literally sold 6 figures on a challenge, Nate, teaching knitting. Knitting. Okay. 6 figures. Okay. It was like $175,000 in 6 weeks. Okay?
That's amazing. Yeah.
If you're not passion, if it's your purpose, then you can monetize anything.
Yeah.
So again, he was a millionaire painting roofs of Home Depots.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. That's a great lesson for those listening too, right? Like, man, there's so many ways to make money out there. And sometimes we just get so pigeonholed, right?
Well, think about it right now. Like right now is for my industry anyway. And also same as you, like you do, I know you do coaching as well.
Yep.
You know how many layoffs are happening right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Everyone and their mom is laying people off or they're freezing. Right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing for what you and I do, the next 2 years, our industry is going to explode because people are going to realize, oh, the skill that I have that, and again, that's why I looked at corporate. And I think, you know, people that are listening to this, your job right now, there are people that are like quiet quitting and then they're like, oh, what's the point of this? No, there's a huge point is that this is your apprenticeship.
Yeah.
This is where you develop all the skills. And here's the best part. If you screw something up, it's not on your dime, it's on theirs.
Yeah, totally.
Right. You're going to be learning as you go. And then you're going to have a moment. Like for me, the moment was in 10 weeks, I made my company, it was like $2.4 million in 10 weeks from my coaching and my direct sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guess how much my salary increased? None.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And I did the math and I go, wait a minute. Wait a minute here. Right. And that's when you go, that's kind of when you go, okay, now here's the thing. I also realized, again, I had a really good mentor and he said, Raylen, I got promoted every single year, new responsibilities, whatever. And it wasn't, I had more money that came with it, but it wasn't about the money for me. I got bored. And I remember when I told my, my mentor at the time, because when that school closed, he offered me another job, 6-figure job, all that stuff. And I said, I'm turning it down to start my company. And he said, I knew you were always going to do this, and before you did, because I didn't know I was going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, right.
Because I always knew, because you got bored, because you would master a skill and then you were on to the next thing. And he goes, the thing I knew about you that was going to be a problem if you decided to stay in corporate was that once you get to that level of like VP of sales or even CEO, you're going to get bored and go, well, I got this down. Now what?
Yeah.
Well, you got to leave a company or do whatever. So anyway, my point is like, if you're, you know, someone who's getting laid off right now, or even you're worried about that, like, look, it's not easier on the entrepreneur side. It's not.
No. Yeah.
But if you're one of those people that are like, no, I got this down, I'm ready for the next challenge. My whole thing is like, I decided I'd rather be broke because of me than to go to another company that they screw up marketing and they screw something, and then like I have to worry about losing my job.
Yeah.
Like if I lose a client, it's my fault.
Right.
Like I don't have anybody to blame, and I enjoyed that. I think that maybe comes from my wrestling background, but like there's no one to blame. Like if I screw something up, or speaking of leadership, like my new thing right now is, Nate, I forgot how to lead.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I was hustling as a solopreneur for so long. And then with the agency, I have a team of 6 now. I have to relearn how to lead people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before in corporate, I'd led a team of like 120 people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You would think it'd be easy, but it's a different game now because they're creatives. They don't work in the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like it's a totally different thing. So, but anyway, in this game, there's never a shortage of problems to be solved. And that's what I loved about it. That's what I love about the game.
Yeah. So does that help you from getting bored, or do you still have that where you kind of?
No, because there's never a time where I'll give you a perfect example, right? So I told you before we created a podcasting agency. Yeah. And before that, though, we just did normal like content marketing. And there was a problem in that everyone was doing short clips, and I just saw that it wasn't working. And granted, we're getting clients left and right for it, but it didn't feel right because it was like, I can't get them the results that I did in the past. Something was changing, and it doesn't really matter what, but it was changed. Something was changing. It wasn't working as well. So now there's a problem you can solve. So now I pivoted the whole company and said, all right, we're going to do podcasting because there's so many, upsides to the client for that. So that's a new problem. Now that we did that, though, I have a new problem to solve, which is like, we have an influx of leads coming in. All right, well, we need a project manager now. Like there's never a time where I'm bored.
Yeah, there's always
problems,
something, right? Yeah.
Especially with marketing today, like there's also new ways to market your podcast or new ways to market YouTube or whatever. And I got to stay up to date with those things and to what's going on Twitter. Like there's always something to go on. And then not to mention too, on the employee side, people get sick. People have complaints, like whatever. Like,
right.
I'm never bored anymore, which is what I love.
Yeah, absolutely. Keeps it interesting. So maybe just for the listener, I know you've talked a lot about what you're doing, but maybe give us a little more specific on what it is that you're up to today.
Yeah. So I remember I mentioned earlier purpose. And so right in the beginning of me starting this, I was like, what is my purpose? Like, why am I waking up every day? And you mentioned obviously the coaches and the mentors that I had, and it's to do that for others, right? To give that back. And so our overall mission is to remove obstacles and excuses for people so they can realize they deserve more. Because here's the truth. We're all full of excuses, right? And you can, if you don't like the word excuse, you can say stories, right? People tell stories.
There you
right.
go.
And so what we provide is another perspective, another way of looking at it. So the first way we help people is, again, it's like, if you think you have a skill set you can monetize, which you do, we have the Coach Academy that we focus on in helping people. And the reason why we dropped it, we actually we have it at $97 a month, which is nothing, by the way, for a coaching program. Like when I first started, I was doing like $10,000 packages. Now it's just $97.
Okay.
The reason I did that was because, again, I see a problem in the coaching industry where it's like, follow my path, Nate, and by the end of the 6 months, you're going to make a whole bunch of money. But what happens at month 4 when Nate decides this is not the right angle? Well, you got to pay me another 10 grand.
Right.
Like, no, like it should take you a minute to figure out your purpose and your brand and all that. It should take you a minute. And I don't want you rushing because you paid me a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
So then the next part of that is our agency. So the way that I look at offers, for example, is what happens after you have all that down. You're making like 10K, and the money doesn't matter, but like, let's say 10K a month, whatever. What happens next? Well, you are making money now, but now you don't have time. So that's where the marketing agency comes into play, like our podcast agency, because then we remove that obstacle from you. So everything we do in an offer standpoint is, let's just remove the obstacle so that they can continue to grow and become the thought leader they deserve to be. And then we have obviously our podcast, which is Elevated Entrepreneur, and our YouTube channel, which is like, you can't afford, I would argue, it's not that you can't afford $97 a month. You're just afraid to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
No problem. Guess what? I talk about the same stuff on my YouTube and my podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
And I bring on expert coaches, because here's the truth. When I first started, I was afraid to invest in myself. Yeah. What do you think all these books came from?
Oh man, no doubt.
So I read like crazy. For the first year, I read like 60 books.
Yeah.
But I also, here's the key though, I implemented.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, so that's what we're up to now. It's just like our mission's really simple. Like, I want people to have freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom.
So podcast agency, you help people start a podcast, or
all the above. So like, listen, there's no better way to me. The metric, so you gotta keep in mind, I come from sales, right? So on the sales side, what is the number one key metric do you think to selling? How do you know when you're ready, like when you're going to make a sale? Is there a key metric that you can think of?
No, tell me.
Trust.
Yeah.
If I get Nate to trust me, you are more likely to buy. But here's the thing though. Can you track trust? Is there a metric?
Right.
It's time.
Yeah.
The more time you spend with somebody, the more you trust them.
Time and touches, right, as they say.
Exactly. Yeah. So now imagine a world where your listener, for example, listens to your podcast every day. So your podcast is like 20 to 30 minutes. Now, let's say, and how many episodes are you putting out every week?
One a week.
Okay. So I've listened to Nate for the last 6 months. Okay. I listened to you for 20 minutes every single week for 6 months. If you suggest something to me, I am way more likely to call you, like to actually take action on that, right? Because I trust you. I feel like I know you. That's the power of podcasting. So for us, we come in and we do two things. We obviously take it over and we will do the actual podcast and upload it. And that's the boring stuff.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is the video, because if you add the element of I can see Nate talking, again, that just amplifies the trust right there. Yeah. And of course, too, like I have a client right now that said he posted a video 9 years ago. He still gets 10 leads a month from that one video 9 years ago. Okay. So YouTube is amazing for that. But the main thing is this, it's twofold. Your listeners will buy things, and oftentimes it's going to be mid-level to low ticket things, right? Courses, that kind of thing. Your guests, though, as you probably know, that's where the opportunity is at.
Yeah.
So if you aim high on your guests, you're going to have way more opportunities. I say opportunities because the easy one is clients. Okay. You meet with someone, you talk to them for an hour, 30 minutes, whatever. They trust you more. And then they go, all right, like, how can we work together? Now you have a client. But the other thing is the opportunities. I mentioned before we got started, like I have a podcast coming up with Evan Carmichael, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that, but there's like, for example, there could be partnerships with him and I do something together, right?
Yeah.
That's far more valuable than him being a client of mine. I'll tell you that much,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So it gives you more opportunity. So for us, the podcast agency, yes, of course, like we want people to listen to it, but the real strategy is getting the right guests on. And then creating opportunities that way. But the other thing is too, it's like for my content, for example, I don't film native stuff for Instagram or Twitter anymore. It all comes from my podcast.
Yeah.
So I post every single day and it's all snippets from my podcast. And I don't have to sit and dance on a reel anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the podcast agency.
Yeah. Thank you. What's the vision for you then in what you're creating and what you want to do? And always, I think championship leaders, they have incredible vision, courage to take action. And what's that look like? And what's the impact, more importantly, you're looking to make?
Nate, you're the first one to ever ask me what my vision is, which is fascinating. Yeah. And it's something that I talk about with other people is that if you don't have a vision, Dean Jackson talks about a great business as VCR. Vision, capability, and reach. If you have all three, you have a really good business.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the vision's pretty simple, and that we have, again, kind of a farming system, if you will. The coaching academy is going to find the best coaches, and of the best coaches, we're going to plug them in into the agency and develop a studio for those podcast people. So that way, again, the studio kind of takes off and can help more people. My overall vision is on like a more like tangible thing is like we're gonna have a headquarters here in Phoenix where again coaches can come. The seminars, we just ran a workshop last week. To me though, my biggest thing is that every single year, if we can create 100 new coaches a year, I'll be happy.
Yeah, that's
because
cool.
everything else gets better. And to me, it's they say like entrepreneurs are the ones that move the needle. What I'm mostly fascinated by is who's in their ear. It's usually the coach.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the book $1 Trillion Coach before?
Love that book. Yes.
Bill Campbell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what people know about is Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and the people that founded Google. What you don't know is the guy that was in their ear saying, hey, what about this? What about that? Yeah. And I want to put more Bill Campbells in the world. Yeah. The people that care about the client. They want them to do well in business, but also in their life. And I want to create 100 Bill Campbells a year.
Yeah, I try to listen to that at least once a year. And so I need to get back at that. But I love that book. It's a great book. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's not just about coaching, it's also about leading people, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's really what it's about. Yeah.
Because when you passed away, for example, because I think the book starts with his funeral, right? And the fact that he had his golf caddy there and the waiter from the restaurant, and they're sitting next to, there's an example of like the waiter that's sitting next to the founder of Google. Yeah. And it didn't matter who you were, like you were positively impacted by this guy. And that's the way that I look at like the change. I don't want to say the change, but like the impact I want to leave behind. It's not, here's the truth, Nate. When I pass away in 20 years, no one's going to even remember my name. And then in 100 years, the people that were related to me won't even know that I existed. Okay. Yeah, right. So what impact can I leave? Well, those coaches that I help create and I help, remove obstacles and excuses for,
Yeah.
who are they going to impact?
Yeah. Yeah.
Could be millions.
Yeah.
So,
No doubt. Yeah. Love it. Love it. What's like kind of been a critical moment in your life where you did decide and took the path you did, but had you not, you'd be in a different place? I think those stories are always powerful for the listener that's in that moment right now to hear as they're making a big decision for themselves.
yeah. So the words you use there is perfect. You decided, right? It's a
Yeah.
decision. And that's really what it is. It's like it's a choice. And I think for me that the biggest kind of pivotal moment was when I chose not to be a victim anymore.
Yeah.
So growing up, like
That's a
my
big
dad, my dad went away to prison when I was a kid for domestic violence. So
Okay.
like I was
Wow.
born into being a victim. So it was my mother. So it was all these people. And I noticed when I went to school, I was getting bad grades at the time, and everyone kept giving me the excuse, right? They kept
Yeah.
saying like, "Oh, it's okay because your dad's in prison. You guys are living in a motel. You got evicted. Like, it's okay that these things are happening. Just try your best."
Sure.
And it made me feel like shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and so I had a bit of an experiment where I said, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. And from that day forth, this was seventh grade, I decided this. Eighth grade, straight A student
Wow.
up until my senior year.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, I could choose to be whoever I can create Raylen. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be based on the past. And so that was the big pivotal moment. And I tested it out various different times. Like, you know, I was a pretty decent wrestler in high school, my freshman, sophomore, junior year. But my senior year, there's a moment where the match was close. And I remember I was on, you know, I was in the referee's position, as they call it, and it was close. And I said, I'm not losing. I made a choice.
Yeah.
And then I went on and won a state championship that year.
That's
It
awesome.
was literally just the choice of
Yeah.
going, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's why, if you notice, our purpose statement is helping people remove excuses. And that's why the moment that you decide to stop being a victim in your life and become the victor, then you start to take responsibility. And then this weird synchronicity that happens where things start happening for you. You get
Yeah.
more lucky, right? You
Yeah,
meet more
right.
people, and
Yeah.
it's just weird. But all it is I just stopped being a victim.
Yeah.
I just chose not to be anymore.
Man, that's
But this
powerful.
also
'Cause
means like not even just that stuff, but it's also like, for example, something happens where someone screws me over, something happened, whatever. It's choosing to not get my power away and saying, no, I needed this.
yeah,
This
right.
is for me.
Yeah, totally. Because there's a lot of power for people in the comfort of just playing the victim. And it's so natural to them because they've been playing it for so long that they don't even recognize it. They don't even know how to get out of it, right?
It's so, first of all, it's super, here's the thing. It's not easy because being a victim is tough, right? You have no power.
Yeah.
But why do people do it? Well, I did it back when I was a kid, and my family did it because the other side of the reality is when it's your fault, it's a harder pill to swallow.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I always say, like, everything serves you. It's just the
Yeah.
question is, does it serve you the way that you want it to?
Right.
The thing is that I always say is like, look, depression happens. Okay. PTSD happened. Like I had civilian PTSD.
Yeah.
Growing, as you can
Yeah,
imagine, right? Like my
absolutely,
first
right.
memories were violence, right?
Yep.
And for a long time, if I heard a loud noise or people yelling, immediately I'd break, like not cry, but I would freeze. I
Yep.
couldn't move. But here's the thing though. People go, I have this thing. I can't do anything about it. And then you go through the list. You go, have you tried eating differently? No. Have you tried working out? No. Have you tried talking to somebody? Have you tried journaling? Have you tried? And you go through the list and they're like, no. So what you did was you said, I'm a victim. Give me the victim pill.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing, though, is that once you know, my job is not to get people to walk through the door and even argue. I would say that my job isn't even to lead them through the door. I just want to show you the door exists. It's your choice if you walk through it or not.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this from my, experience. When I walked through that door, my life got better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Even
Yeah.
I'm getting married on Sunday, actually.
Oh, awesome. Man.
And even with my fiance, if we get in an argument, I don't put blame on her. I go, what did I do?
Yeah.
How did I speak? And that gives me power to fucking change something.
Right. Yeah.
And for me, I'd rather have the power to change something, even if it's me trying something every single month, every single day, than to give my power away to being a
Yeah.
victim.
I think that's a huge key to a successful marriage as well. So that's awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
What's as we kind of start to wrap this up, if there's a couple things that you could give to the listener, if they were going to implement today, would help move their life forward today, what would those be?
I think one of the most important things that someone can do is figuring out what two things, your intention and your purpose. Purpose meaning like, what are you waking up for? Like, if you did one thing every single day, it doesn't matter, by the way, if you're in a 9-to-5 job, you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You need a purpose statement, because once you have purpose, everything gets better. Like, when you no longer have purpose is when tyranny kind of comes into play. It's when evil kind of takes place. It's when you're a little bit easier to be swayed off of and you look at people doing it online and you go, I want to be like that. Like, that's where the problem begins. But if you have purpose, then everything, you have a filter now. So for me, for example, I mentioned earlier, it's to remove obstacles and excuses to help people realize they deserve more, right? Now, if I'm presented with an opportunity, but it is not aligned with removing excuses or obstacles, I don't do it.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Like, especially in my industry, being online, there's 1,000,000,001 different opportunities. There's crypto, there's all these, I say no to a lot. I say no to a lot of podcasts, because it's like, for example, if you're only going to ask me about business stuff, for example, and I can't get into the real stuff, which is like what's going on up here, I don't want to do it, because it's not going to help me remove excuses. So anyway, that's why I wake up every single day. It's to give me an opportunity to remove those excuses. Even if it's just one person a day, that's a win. That's success.
Yeah.
Funny thing happens though, Nate, is when you follow your purpose, you tend to make more money. It's this cool thing. The other thing is the intention, right? Like, putting out first how you want to feel, and then you walk into that. What I mean by that is, like, most of our feeling is just based on the past. I feel sad today. Well, guess what? That's just a what's the word for it? It's like an article of the past. You're not actually sad about what's happening right now.
Right.
When you're in the present moment, there's nothing happening, right?
Yeah.
It's usually Nate said something that made me sad. No, Nate triggered something from my past, right?
Yeah.
So if you live in the past, you're going to have the same results. So the idea, again, for the listeners in terms of like tactical things, is getting really intentional every day about how you are deciding to feel that day, right? And deciding that you have a choice. Oh, like perfect examples. I have a 4-year-old son, and he's the one person on this earth that can make me go unconscious. Meaning, like, he triggers stuff.
Yeah.
If he doesn't eat, for example, I get really upset. I get really mad. Well, I had to do some deep dive, and I go, oh, the reason I get so mad is because my father was shit. Yeah. And so if I don't get my son to eat, that means I'm a bad dad too. And I'm just like my dad. Now, that's not my son's fault.
Right. Yeah.
He just doesn't want to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Too. I'm a terrible cook. Okay. The only thing I can make is mac and cheese. So he probably doesn't want to eat it. So then but once you make that realization, now you have choice. And at that point, then I usually go, all right, like, honestly though, I usually tap my fiance and go, hey, like, can you do this? Because you're better at it than me. But it's still a choice. Don't have to blow up. So anyway, it would be this: find your purpose. Spend the time to do that. And I'll give people kind of a hint if they're needing to find it. It usually comes from pain. Your purpose usually comes from pain. For me, obviously it was the pain of being a victim. So now my purpose is to not make people victims anymore. That's it. The cool part is, once you figure out your purpose, the how you do it does not matter. But once you find a good how, like, again, the academy, between the academy and the podcast, I can change the how. I can have 1,000,000,001 different ways that I help people do that. It doesn't matter. But the second that it no longer serves that purpose, I'll stop doing it.
Yeah. Love it, man. Yeah, that's great. What's a couple of ways that we can, or maybe the main way that we can, learn more about you, and if they're interested in your academy or the podcasting and everything that you're up to, check that out.
Yeah, I would say on YouTube, Raylen Davis, and then Elevated Entrepreneur, or you can just put in, like, if you're going to podcast, just type in Raylen Davis, it'll pop up. And then for direct access to me, like, I'm kind of falling in love again with Twitter.
You're the
but
second
because
person today I've talked to that said,
dude,
that.
it's
Man,
just,
I've never gotten into Twitter.
Here's what I like about it. You gotta learn how to use it. And I didn't know when I first started doing it. And one, it's following the right people. That's number one, because you go off of their conversation a lot and you'll comment on stuff. But I also like it, again, for you, like with a podcast, this is kind of how I'm using it, is that like, if you email me, I'll be honest with you, Kayla my fiance goes through all my emails. Like I don't really read them. I hate reading emails. But if you send me a message on Twitter, you're gonna get me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'll be able to respond immediately. And so anyway, I'm starting to like Twitter again.
Yeah. Yeah. I might have to go that route and check it out. At least give it a try.
Because even in your podcast descriptions, you can put in there like, obviously here's, ways that I could help you, but also like hit me up on Twitter with a question or any comments you have about podcast episodes. And then too, like, instead of like sending them to a Discord channel or something like that, like, I like it because of the direct access to the person.
Right. Yeah.
And it gives you ideas for like, guests, or gives you ideas for what you can talk about.
Sure. Yeah. I love it. Well, I appreciate you being here today. It's been a great conversation, man. Thank you.
Yeah. It's been fun, man. Appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Yeah. And as you're listening, if you've enjoyed this conversation, don't go anywhere. Stay right here for the next episode. And again, Raylen, thanks so much, man.
Appreciate it, man.